Karina Longworth for Netscape at the Movies. Formed in the 1960s to replace the crumbling censorship code erected by Will Hayes in 1934, the Motion Picture Association of America's Ratings Board has the ability to make, or as is more often the case, break any film's theatrical future. When it comes to mainstream marketing, R-rated films are restricted in terms of TV advertising as well as at the ticket counter. But the NC-17 is the real kiss of death. Created in the 70s in order to create a distinction between art movies with mature content and hardcore porn, NC-17 has become a no man's land for all but the most adventurous marketers. You can't advertise the films on TV, most theater chains won't screen them, and forget about selling the DVDs at Blockbuster or Walmart. In short, hated by independently minded filmmakers, feared by the marketers of their films, and mocked by all but the most lapdog-ish of critics, the Motion Picture Association of America, nevertheless, has more power over any film than any other person or body in history. Documentarian Kirby Dick's This Film Is Not Yet Rated, which opens on select screens today before premiering on the Independent Film Channel this fall, takes on the noble pursuit of taking apart the MPAA. What the filmmaker finds, from the association's strange preoccupation with secrecy to the discrepancies between their treatment of studio and indie films, is certainly educational, even if Dick's tactics and very thesis are somewhat questionable. To say that the MPAA cultivates impenetrability would be an understatement. So, the Academy Award-nominated Dick has to hire a team of private investigators in order to get anywhere near the raters themselves, and have any kind of document to speak of. As such, a film that starts out as an almost academic study of censorship turns into a Michael Moore-style real-time caper, as Dick directs his hired private dicks to stalk members of the ratings board from the backseat of their SUV.
Oh, a lot of women. We need to go for this.
I'm gonna put on my safety belt.
Left utterly impotent by the MPAA's absolutism, Dick turns to the ultimately childish recourse of outing the board members. Though the board's ostensible mission is to provide guidance on films from the average American parent to the average American parent, Dick reveals that many members of the board aren't exactly average, and some aren't even parents. But whilst it's one thing to expose corporate hypocrisy, the pleasure Dick takes in revealing the identities of the raters, the sheer glee with which he trails them into fast food restaurants and picks through their trash, this stuff accomplishes nothing in the way of argument, and in fact, it actually borders on being creepy. Most people would probably agree with Dick that the rating system could be improved, but by devoting so much energy to so many stunts of aggression, he actually weakens his own argument. I mean, this is why people hate Michael Moore. It also doesn't help that many of the films that Dick singles out as victims of the MPAA's prudishness aren't exactly paragons of the form. In Dick's world, any film that went out unrated because the director wanted to keep a shot of pubic hair is instantly elevated to the status of classic, and any director who bristles at snipping dialogue is a de facto genius. Tons of great films have had run-ins with the censors, but a run-in with the censors does not a great film make. Case in point.
Censorship gets fucked.
Dick is clearly over the moon when This Film Is Not Yet Rated receives an NC-17, due to the many clips within that are taken from other films that have had trouble securing an R. Would any rational person find Dick's documentary inappropriate for viewing by teenagers? Of course not. But nor would any rational person believe that Dick's experience haggling with a board over a film that exists primarily to undermine their right to exist is in any way typical of what the average filmmaker goes through when trying to secure a rating. And it's alarming that Dick suggests as much. Also out in theaters this week, The Wicker Man, a remake of a cult film from the 70s directed by Neil LaBute and starring Nicolas Cage. This film was not screened for critics, and for a project of this pedigree, that can only mean one thing. It's probably pretty awful. And in one solitary screen this week in New York City, but opening wider over the coming weeks, is Mutual Appreciation, directed by Andrew Bujalski. Bujalski won an Independent Spirit Award a couple of years ago for his feature debut, Funny Ha Ha. Mutual tells the story of a musician named Alan who moves to Brooklyn, tries to put a band together, and finds himself falling for his best friend's girl.
Do you plan on being a rock star for the duration? Like, is this the rest of your life?
I mean, you know. Yes, I would be a rock star for the duration. for the next 6 months while I'm still alive.
Mutual Appreciation feels a lot like a Cassavetes film, with that filmmaker's casual misogyny replaced with an even more casual sense of anxiety. About women, sure, but also about pretty much everything else. And that gives the story, which is pretty much just about hipsters sitting around chatting, a much deeper resonance. The film has been a hit on the festival circuit for the past year, and with good reason. You won't see a better film about hipsters sitting around chatting this year. I'm Karina Longworth for Netscape at the Movies.